I'm Rosanne Currarino. I am a co-editor of the Journal of the Gilded Age and Progressive Era, and I've been on the editorial team since January 2020. I grew up in Texas, where the American side of my family has lived since before the Gilded Age, but I went to school in the Northeast, and I've spent my career teaching American history to Canadians, and it's been kind of a blast.
I'm Brian Ingrassia. I'm also co-editor of the Journal of the Gilded Age and Progressive Era, having just come on recently. I'm originally from Central Illinois, with at least one wing of my family arriving firmly in the Progressive Era. I went to a small college in Central Illinois, one of the first people in my family to go to college, did my PhD at the University of Illinois, and I've been bouncing around what I guess we might call the Sun Belt for most of my career, teaching American history to people in Georgia, Atlanta specifically. I was outside of Nashville for a few years, and now I'm at a place called West Texas A&M University, which is just outside of Amarillo, Texas.
I am particularly interested in how Americans thought about the economic and social changes wrought by industrialization and incorporation in the Gilded Age and Progressive Era. And the first book I did looked at the labor question, so how Americans thought about work and production in an era of mass production and mass consumption. And my current project uses California's early orange growers. These are the folks who go on to create what becomes Sunkist, to think about how regular capitalists dealt with an increasingly corporate business landscape. And I've really loved working with the orange growers because they embody much of what I love about the Gape. You never know what they're going to do next.
My work, I started out graduate school. I was planning to do antebellum intellectual history, specifically higher education history. And then I got to the University of Illinois, where a lot of people were doing late 19th, early 20th century stuff, especially labor history. And I really kind of got sucked into that time period. And I've enjoyed my work. My first book is on the history of higher education, specifically about college football and progressive era football reform. And a lot of people think of me as a sport historian, but it's really, I wanted to be a historian of higher education. And when you write a book on the history of college football, people decide that you must be a sport historian. And I have moved in that direction, but I'm still very firmly, I'm very interested in things that, looking at how society embraces popular culture, including sport. And a lot of my current work deals with the progressive era good roads movement and the emergence of automobility. And my second book's gonna be coming out pretty soon. It's on the early history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's also in some ways it's also in some ways dealing with the history of capitalism, but probably in a different kind of way than what Rosanne's doing in her research, but kind of looking at how some of the early historian promoters of auto racing were capitalists who were kind of using popular culture as a way to promote the technologies they were building, but also the usage of those technologies.
So one of the things that I love about the journal, and one of the reasons that I was so excited to be part of the journal, but just an excited reader of the journal for years before as well, is the extraordinary breadth and depth of J. Gape. And yes, we do call it J. Gape. It might seem kind of paradoxical because the journal only deals with a small time period, really, 1865 to 1920 or so. But because we have such a small time period, relatively speaking, Europeanists would tell us, oh, please, that's all you deal with, but true. But because of that, the journal has an incredible range of topics that it publishes on, and it goes into those topics and fields and questions in great depth. And this has been really quite exciting. So even in the first volume in 2002, the first volume of the journal, there were articles on political and economic history, on women's history, on gender history, on labor history, urban history, religion, African American history, legal history. I mean, it is just so amazing, the breadth of research that the journal has published. And now, thanks in no small part to the work of Boyd Cothran, previous editor of the journal. We're now getting more and more submissions and publishing more articles from Indigenous scholars on Indigenous history. And this coming year, for instance, we'll be publishing the 2021 Shigate graduate student essay winner, Zeta Ballou, who wrote a really great article on the Indian side of the question, settling the story of Potawatomi removal. I have to read this, make sure I get it right. Settling the story of Potawatomi removal in the 20th century Midwest. And it's really fabulous. And I'm just so happy that we're expanding even further. We've done some additional work recently in queer history, including publishing a really great teaching essay on teaching the queer history of the Gilded Age and Progressive era. But it's this kind of like, the journal is ever evolving and ever changing, even while it's building on its long existing strengths. And it is just so much fun to work with. But it's also fun because we've got great book reviews. They're longer than your regular book review. Teaching has long been an interest of the journal, and we publish really great essays on teaching the Gilded Age and Progressive era. And they have saved me many times the night before, maybe even the morning of a class. In the very first issue of the journal in 2002, Walter Nugent, who was then president of Shigate, talked about the sort of amazing color and vivacity of the Gilded Age. And he wanted to say that color, hoped that color would infuse every issue of this new endeavor. And I think it really does. So, and I'm excited that the journal is now moving into a new era with a new editor. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of those things that Rosanne just said, in the sense that, this time period, even though it is relatively brief, 60 or 70 years, there's so many different topics that we can talk about. And I've been really excited to see, again, the rise of more articles on Native American history. I have a long history with this journal. When one of the first articles I ever submitted as a graduate student was to this journal. And it was something that I had submitted to another journal. It took them 5 months to get me to give me a rejection, this other journal. And I turned around, changed it a little bit, sent it to the Journal of the Gilded Age Progressive Era. And Alan Lesoff, who was the editor at the time, took 3 days to respond to me and say, well, we probably can't use it exactly the way it is now, but if you change it a little bit, maybe kind of reframe it around this idea, maybe it's something we'd be interested in. And I did that. It took me about 9 or 10 months, and I sent it in. It got through revise and resubmit. It eventually got published in the very first issue published by Cambridge University Press in 2011. It was funny, later Alan was like, wow, that was such a good idea for a journal. And I said, Alan, it was partly your idea, so thank you for that. And I guess one of the things that really excites me, I have a significant amount of editing experience. I edited a monograph series at the University of Tennessee Press on sport history. But one of the things I really enjoy is working with authors and helping them frame articles and improve articles and improve their writing. And so I'm really excited about doing that. I'm excited about working with especially first-time authors, but not just first-time authors, and getting, again, really good articles, continuing the strength of the journal, but also building on some of those strengths. With a lot of my background in the history of popular culture and higher education, those are some of the topics I'm kind of hoping to bring into the journal. And like Rosanne said, the book review section, I think is a really good strength of this journal. When I teach my historical methods course, pretty frequently, this is the journal where I hand my students the book review section from the most recent issue of the Journal of the Gilded Age Progressive Era, and I say, here, write your book reviews like this, where you talk about sources and argument and intervention. And I want to see, just kind of across the board, those strengths continue as we continue to kind of bring more people into the society and bring more topics and things into the journal itself.
One of the things that I think is great about this journal, and this is something that started with the first editor, Maureen Flanagan, Alan Lesoff, as Brian just explained, continued this, Ben Johnson and Robert Johnston, Boyd Cothran, myself, and I know that this is going to continue with Brian, is that we're really willing to do a lot of work over a long time with with an author on an essay. So while some journals, you revise and resubmit once and that's the end of it, it does happen or it doesn't happen, end of story. We're willing to really, work over a number of revisions. And we have published even recently articles that started out as great ideas, but maybe needed some work. They've gone through 3 or 4 revisions and they've come out as fantastic contributions to the field. And this is something that I think, really, it's obviously we're not the only journal that does this, but it really does distinguish us, that we are willing to work over a long period of time with authors to really make something shine.
I was, with one of my first experiences being with Alan and being with the journal, the Gilded Age Progressive Era, I was so used to an editor who was kind of who stepped in and said, well, here's your reviews, really emphasize this point from your reviewer number 1 and really think about this from reviewer number 2, and maybe here's a few other things you can consider. And then another time I worked with another journal, fine journal, and the editor basically said, well, here's your peer reviews, good luck. And I said, what is that how this works? And I realized I'd kind of gotten spoiled working with J. Gape. And I want to kind of continue that sense of cultivating and building and working with authors to make really, really good articles. And I said, I have a long history with the journal. One of the things I did a number of years ago is I was on the committee that got to read 2 years worth of articles and pick the best article out of that 2-year period. And it was amazing seeing the quality and the breadth of articles. There were great pieces on African American history. There was one on the Jubilee Singers that I remember out of Fisk University. There was an article on weather prediction and probability and so forth. I think that was the one that ended up winning our award. But it was so hard because out of those 2 years worth of journals, 8 issues total, we had so many good contenders that it was really hard kind of just picking one article that we said, yeah, that's the best one in this period.
Yeah, we are lucky to have an embarrassment of riches. Truly, it is a privilege and a delight. Coming up in the journal, we have a lot of noise. The next issue coming out in October is a special issue on sound in the Gilded Age and Progressive Era. It's been, the special issue editors are Rebecca Tenio McKenna and David Sweisman. They have pulled together some really exciting research articles and articles about research about sort of web development, museum work in the sound, on sound in the Gilded Age and Progressive Era. And they've also pulled together 2 teaching articles on teaching using sound in the classroom, what kinds of sources you might use. Here are some examples of sources, material culture of sound, which you'd think would be kind of odd, but it turns out is pretty amazing, using collections from the Smithsonian. So it will be a great resource for all of us looking forward to upcoming courses, right, as we want to sort of prep our courses. And that issue is also going to have a really excellent roundtable looking at one of the great books of our field, Dan Rogers' Atlantic Crossing. It's been out now for 25 years, hard to believe. And if it is not the most cited book in J. Gape, it's got to be close, right? Like everybody uses Atlantic Crossings as a touchstone for everyone. So I'm really grateful to Rob McGreevy for having pulled together some scholars to talk about the impact Atlantic Crossings has had on their work, on the field, and where we might go from there. And then in January, we have another special issue. We don't usually do back-to-back special issues, but when you got them, smoke them, right? Like we got to do it. These are great issues. This one is thinking about how we think about the Gape through literature, both fiction and nonfiction. And Elizabeth Sheenan and Nancy Unger, former president of Gape, pulled together this special issue. Again, we have some fabulous research articles and a couple of essays on teaching Gilded Age Progressive Era history using literature. And finally, in that issue, we also have a roundtable of scholars remembering Walter Nugent. And Walter was president of Gape when Gape formed. He was super important to the journal and to the society, but he's also a great historian, a fabulous human being, as people will read in this, and an inveterate Scotch drinker, important fact to note. But we're really excited to have that coming up in the journal too. And in future issues that we've got sort of lined up, crime in the Gilded Age, a global Gilded Age, and the Gilded Age Progressive Era Origins of Our Current Climate Crisis. And that's hopefully going to be a roundtable coming out of a roundtable that's going to be at the OAH in New Orleans in 2024. So if anyone hears that and hears this and is going to be at the OAH, go, because it's going to be a great roundtable. So that's what we have in the immediate future, along with research articles that are heading into production soon. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, we've been proofing a lot of those things that are coming out soon, the special issue on sound, the roundtable on Atlantic crossings. It's been really fun reading those kind of before they're even out. And what I want to do is continue kind of the good balance that the journal has now, right? We're not a journal that, like Rosanne said, we don't turn every issue into a special issue. I think sometimes that can get a little bit overwhelming for readers, but when we've got a really great topic, we do that. I'm thinking of a few years ago, there was a really great special issue on food studies and nutrition. And that came at just the perfect time because I had a graduate student who was interested in food studies taking my Gilded Age Progressive Era graduate seminar. And I just said, okay, guys, that's what we're going to read for the last week of the course. And that really shaped her thesis. And so I'm thinking that that's a really good thing for us to continue doing. And especially if it's around special issues on things that are really relevant to us now, like climate change, globalization. I'm really interested in maybe in the next year or two having a special issue maybe on the or a roundtable on the history of higher education, because right now we're seeing a lot of crises in higher education, and the Gilded Age Progressive Era is such an important time, based on my own research, but also just I think we would all agree it's such an important time for the formation of a lot of present day structures of higher education. So that's the kind of thing I'm excited about bringing to the journal. I really like the roundtables or reflections on classic books like Atlantic Crossings or Robert Weeby's The Search for Order. And I want to kind of continue doing that. What I'm hoping we might be able to do is kind of talk to our editorial board and some of our readers and say, okay, what are some of the classics? What are things that you want us to reflect on? So it's not just me saying, well, here's a book that I read 20 years ago that I think is really important, but maybe getting some ideas from the readership and saying, okay, what are some of the things that we need to be reflecting back on? And thinking about where we've been as a field, as well as where we're going as a field. And I think that we can all benefit from those kind of historiographical reflections on the field, at the same time that it's really important to have practitioners shaping the field. You know, that's one of the most important things we can do is publish research articles that are starting out as dissertation chapters, conference papers, or chapters from people's books, so that we can see where the practitioners of the field are taking the field. And so again, I want to keep that balance. I think earlier Rosanne mentioned the piece, the pedagogical piece on teaching LGBTQ history, that I think was Brian Trump was the author of that one, and that was a really, really helpful piece to have. And I like the idea of continuing that balance, and I'm excited about what we can do in terms of bringing in things people are interested in, looking back on some of those historiographical pieces, but also, again, you know, carefully picking what are the special issues, what are the roundtables, so that we are talking about things that are really important, not just to us as a historical society or as historians, but also to American society and where we're at right now. I'm really looking forward to working with authors, seeing what kinds of ideas people are coming up with. You know, interested in working with leadership of the society to identify the important things that we need to be talking about. So, I mean, I'm a bit of a weirdo in the sense that actually I kind of oddly look forward to page proofs. I really enjoy reading things and kind of, you know, catching the little bitty errors that sneak in here and there. But probably the thing I'm most excited about is kind of the big picture, is you know, helping people frame their work and improve their work, and thinking about what are the topics that we need to be talking about for as broad as the journal can be in this era. The study of this era has been. Maybe there are more topics we need to be talking about, and kind of identifying some of those and pulling those in, and maybe pulling more people into the society and into the journal as well. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Rosanne?
I think there's so much potential for continued growth of the journal. There is so much kind of excitement in the field now, I think, of people who are working in diverse corners or centers of the Gilded Age and Progressive era, and it is really a delight to get the little ding from Scholar One saying a new article has been submitted. So this is really it's great, and I'm very much looking forward to working with Brian, because it will be so exciting to see the kinds of projects that he starts, and it will be exciting to see them come into fruition over the next few years. So it's great. It's just very nice to know the journal is in good hands, and it will continue on the trajectory that it's been on, which is a wonderful one.
This is a really good journal. It's been around for 20 years or so. I don't want to radically change it. At the same time, I want to continue to improve it. I think it's been getting better all the time. And I'm really excited about seeing where I can kind of continue that growth and maintain the strengths of the journal.
And I'll just add to that it has been, for me at least, a real pleasure working with Cambridge University Press. And the press has been very supportive of the kinds of initiatives that we've put forward. They're really supportive of, our roundtables, but also of adding additional material, ancillary material to the journal in the digital format, of being really willing to promote the journal, especially through, we did these two great roundtables on the 1918-1919 flu pandemic, revisiting it in the age of COVID, and the press was excellent at really promoting those widely, and they have been used widely. They were used in news reports. Lots of journalists tapped into them. Lots of students have read them, and so that kind of fast response from the press and really willingness to support the journal has been great.
I'm really excited about working with the journal and seeing where it goes. I've got my ideas about what we can do, but I also know there's a lot of other people out there, probably smarter than me, who are going to have even better ideas. And I want to listen to those folks and see how we can continue to take what's a really, really great journal for a really great society and continue to make it an even better journal, an even better venue for the scholarship in this really exciting field.